All right, buckle up, everyone, because today's deep dive is going to get pretty interesting. We're tackling a question that honestly keeps me up at night. Are some of those car brands we see around actually on the verge of a total breakdown?
And to help us sift through the wreckage, so to speak, we've got insights from a real expert, Doug DeMuro.
Right. You know him from his YouTube channel, millions of subscribers. The guy's like a car whisperer.
Yeah, but he doesn't just geek out over horsepower and fancy interiors. What's fascinating is he digs deep into the business side of things.
Oh, absolutely. He breaks down how these car companies make decisions, what kind of pressures they're facing. And it's crazy how often those choices lead to entire brands just poof, gone.
It's a wild world, right? I mean, how many car companies have just vanished from the U.S. market over the years?
It's like a graveyard of forgotten names.
Yeah.
But it goes to show even the big names can't afford to get complacent.
Not at all. And DeMuro's work really hammers that home. This industry demands constant innovation. Like, you can't just build a reliable car anymore. You got to be thinking about fuel efficiency, tech, the whole ownership experience. And even if you nail all that,
Still no guarantees, huh?
nope.
Okay, so let's get specific.
Sure.
DeMuro pointed out a few brands that are facing some major challenges. And first up is Fiat. I always thought they had this cool, quirky vibe with that little Fiat 500.
Yeah.
They even had the electric 500e for a while there. But apparently, even being cute and eco-friendly doesn't always cut it.
It's tough out there. And DeMuro highlights something interesting, like the compact car market where the 500 lives is actually shrinking.
Really?
It's not just Fiat struggling. It's almost like the whole category is losing its mojo.
So why is that? Are SUVs just way more practical for families these days?
It's a mix of things, for sure. SUVs, they give you that higher view on the road, tons of cargo space, and they just feel, well, safer, especially for families. But there's also this shift in how people think about fuel efficiency. Engines are so much better now. Even big SUVs are getting decent mileage.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So where does that leave Fiat? They actually stopped making the electric 500e, but they're going to release a gas-powered hybrid in 2025.
A hybrid.
You think that's enough to turn things around for
It's
them?
a gamble, that's for sure. Can they make a hybrid that really stands out? One that people actually get excited about? And can they overcome this idea that compact cars are somehow less desirable?
Lots of big questions there. We'll have to wait and see. All right, moving on, Chrysler. This one's been struggling for a while, and DeMuro didn't hold back. He pointed out their absolutely dismal reliability rating from Consumer Reports.
Ooh, yeah, that's gotta sting.
Big time. And what's worse is their lineup is so limited, it's basically down to just the Pacifica minivan.
The Pacifica, it's been having its own issues too, hasn't it?
Big time. Get this.
Mm-hmm.
The Pacifica Hybrid has a customer satisfaction score of just 14 out of 100.
14. Wow, I know, right? How is that even possible? It's got to be something deeper going on there. Maybe with the tech, maybe with the reliability, or the whole ownership experience. It makes you wonder if Chrysler's become a burden for Stellantis, their parent company.
Because at some point, you got to ask, is it even worth it to keep pouring money into a brand that's just not performing?
Tough decisions, for sure.
Now, Buick, this is where things get really interesting because it's like they're living two completely different lives.
Yeah, talk about a split personality.
Here in the U.S., they're struggling. But over in China,
Boom! They're huge. One of the most popular brands in the world's biggest car market.
it's wild. What are they doing differently over there, do you think?
Well, for one, they've got a long history in China, going way back, so there's that brand recognition. Plus, they've really tailored their models to what Chinese buyers want.
Makes sense. But here in the U.S., they're shifting gears, going all in on electric vehicles. They're calling them Electra.
Electra.
Think that's enough to revitalize them in the U.S. market?
It's a bold move. But the question is, will Americans see them as a leader in the EV space? Or are they still going to think of Buicks as, their grandpa's car?
True. That's a tough image to shake. Okay, let's talk about Mitsubishi.
Hmm.
DeMuro uses this phrase, they're stuck in second-choice territory.
Yeah.
Like they make good, reliable cars, but they just don't.
Don't quite stand out.
Yeah. Take their Outlander, for example. It's actually a pretty popular model, but
But it's often seen as the backup plan, if you can't get your hands on a Toyota RAV4 Prime.
is that a marketing problem then? Are they just not doing a good job of selling what makes them unique?
Could be. They haven't been as flashy or as innovative with their marketing as some of the other brands. And while their cars are generally good, they haven't really introduced anything that's truly groundbreaking. Like they recently discontinued the Mirage, which was one of their cheapest and most fuel-efficient models. So it seems like they're trying to move up market, maybe.
That's risky because now they're going head-to-head with the really big players in those higher segments.
Yeah, it is.
And speaking of tough competition, let's talk about Alfa Romeo.
Alfa Romeo.
A brand with tons of history, a loyal following.
Lots of passion.
But they've always struggled to really make it big in the U.S.
Yeah, it's tough.
They've got that undeniable Italian flair.
Beautiful design.
Performance-focused. But they've always had issues with reliability, their dealer network, just the overall perception.
Right.
And their lineup right now is pretty limited. They've got the 4-seat coupe, the Stelvio SUV, and the Giulia sedan. But DeMuro made an interesting point. He thinks Stellantis, their parent company, might not be as invested in their success as they are with some of their other brands.
Interesting.
It makes you wonder if they can carve out a sustainable spot here in the U.S., especially going up against the luxury giants like BMW.
Yeah, it's a real David and Goliath situation.
Now, this next brand might surprise some people, Infiniti. They're Nissan's luxury brand, but lately it feels like they've lost their, I don't know.
Their sparkle.
Yeah, their sparkle. They're trying to compete with Lexus, Genesis, Audi.
But they haven't quite figured out what makes them special, have they?
Exactly. And DeMuro was pretty critical of how Nissan's been handling the brand. He said they haven't put in the money to keep it competitive.
Yeah, they've been slow to jump on the electric vehicle train. And their designs, they haven't been very, inspiring.
So is Infiniti doomed? Or is there still time for a comeback?
It would take a serious commitment from Nissan, that's for sure. They'd need to invest in new tech, refresh their designs, tell a better brand story. Something that makes people excited about Infiniti again.
Otherwise, it's tough to see how they can survive in the luxury market.
Absolutely. It's brutal out there.
Okay, last but not least, we have Mini, and this one's a head-scratcher.
How so?
Well, their brand is super strong, right?
Iconic.
But it's also really limiting. They're known for those small, retro-inspired cars.
Yeah, the cute little things.
But that only gets you so far in today's market, you know?
Right.
They've tried to branch out with bigger models, even some SUVs.
Not as successful.
And now, with everyone going electric.
Big dilemma.
Right. How do you electrify a brand that's all about nostalgia and quirkiness?
And appeal to a wider audience without, alienating your core fans.
It's a tough balancing act. So we've covered a lot of ground here. The auto industry is like a battlefield.
Definitely not for the faint of heart.
And each of these brands, they're facing their own unique battles. No guarantees of victory for anyone.
It's a constant fight for survival.
Before we move on, though, what's your take on all this? Is there a common thread you see running through all these brand stories?
It's not just one single thread, but rather a whole web of challenges. They're all tangled up together.
Oh, interesting. Explain that.
Like, take Fiat. They're struggling with the fact that people just aren't as into compact cars anymore. Tastes are changing, technology's changing. Then you've got Chrysler dealing with some serious reliability problems. A tiny lineup of cars. Makes you wonder if they'll even be around much longer, if their parent company even cares. And Buick, they're like two totally different brands depending on where you look. Thriving in China, barely hanging on in the US, shows you how important it is to really understand your market.
Right. It's not enough to just make a good car anymore.
No way. You got to navigate all these forces, all this complexity, and keep up with what people want, what technology's doing.
And then you've got Mitsubishi trying to escape that second choice label.
It's like they're always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Exactly.
Maybe they need to rethink how they market themselves, how they design their cars. And Alfa Romeo, all that Italian passion, they're trying to break into a luxury market that's dominated by, the big guns.
BMW, Mercedes.
Makes you wonder if heritage alone is enough to compete when everyone's obsessed with the latest tech, the flashiest brands.
And then there's Mini, trying to figure out how to stay true to their retro coolness, but also embrace the electric future.
Like, can you even have an electric Mini that still feels like a Mini?
It's a tough one. It's almost like All these brands are wrestling with the same questions.
Yeah.
How do they stay relevant? How do they keep up with what people want? And how do they stand out when there's just so much competition?
It's a real battle for attention, for sure. And parent companies, they play a huge role in all this. We saw it with Chrysler and Stellantis, and again with Alfa Romeo. Sometimes it feels like some brands are getting all the love, all the resources, while others get left behind. It's like internal politics can make or break a car company.
It's true. Those parent companies have to make tough choices about where to invest their money, and those choices can literally determine which brands live or die. So, considering all of this, what does DeMuro think is going to happen to these brands? Is he optimistic?
Let's just say he's not exactly popping champagne. He's particularly worried about Chrysler. He thinks their situation is, well, unsustainable.
Like they're on the Titanic, heading straight for that iceberg.
Pretty much. He sees them as a drag on Stellantis, and he thinks their future is, well, a big question mark. As for Fiat, he thinks that Hybrid 500 is a gutsy move, but he's not sure it'll be enough to save them. The compact car market is just too tough right now.
So, not a lot of hope for Chrysler and Fiat. What about the others?
He's a bit more hopeful about Buick, mainly because of how strong they are in China.
Right, right.
That could be their saving grace. But they can't ignore the U.S. market completely. They need to figure out how to win back American buyers, and that those new electric vehicles, those are going to be key.
What about Mitsubishi? Any chance they can escape that second choice trap?
It's going to be a tough climb, that's for sure. They need to find a way to differentiate themselves, to offer something truly special that makes people choose them over the competition.
And Alfa Romeo. Can that Italian flair finally conquer American roads?
He's got a soft spot for them, he really does. But he thinks they're up against some serious heavyweights in the luxury market. They need to prove to American buyers that they're offering something truly unique, something beyond just a fancy badge.
So they got to up their game, basically.
Yeah.
What about Mini? Can they evolve while still staying true to who they are?
That's the million-dollar question. He thinks they need to find that sweet spot, appealing to more people without alienating their loyal fans.
It's a tightrope walk.
It really is.
So basically, all these brands are at a crossroads. Big decisions ahead, and the stakes are high.
It's a reminder that nothing's guaranteed, not even in the car world. Brand loyalty, it's not what it used to be. People have more choices than ever, and they're not afraid to switch brands if they're not happy.
That's so true.
And it's not just about the cars themselves, it's about the whole experience. You know, how the brands treat their customers, how they make them feel.
Right, right. It's like you're not just buying a car, you're buying into a whole lifestyle. And this is relevant to everyone, right? It's not just about cars. We all make choices about which brands we support, whether it's phones, clothes, food. Brand loyalty is not a given anymore.
Not at all.
So what does all of this mean for the future of the auto industry as a whole? I mean, things are changing so fast.
Electric vehicles are on the rise, self-driving cars are on the horizon, ride-sharing is exploding. It's an exciting time, but also a little scary.
I get it. It's like we're on the edge of this huge transformation.
Exactly. And the brands that can adapt, the ones that can figure out what people want and how to deliver it in new and exciting ways, those are the brands that are going to shape the future of how we get around.
Wow, it's kind of mind-blowing to think about.
It is. But that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. We're not just looking at the past, we're trying to understand the present and get a glimpse of the future.
We're like explorers, charting this uncharted territory.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be inspired to create the next big thing that revolutionizes the whole industry.
I love it. All right, so we've explored the challenges, we've talked about what the future might hold, but there's this one big question hanging over everything. What's the future of the auto industry as a whole? Are we all going to be zipping around in flying cars in a few years? Will our cars be driving themselves? Or are we headed for some dystopian future where only the super rich can afford their own transportation?
Those are the big questions, aren't they? It's impossible to say for sure what the future holds, but one thing's clear. The auto industry is on the verge of a brand new era, an era shaped by tech, by the environment, and by how people's wants and needs are changing.
It's exciting and a little bit terrifying all at the same time.
I know, right? But the brands that can navigate all of this complexity, that can deliver what people want, they're the ones who are going to write the next chapter in this story.
It's like we've got a front row seat to this epic drama.
And thanks to DeMuro, we've got a pretty good idea of what's going on behind the scenes.
So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to throw out a question to our listeners. Of all the brands we've talked about today, which ones do you think will make it? Which ones do you think are truly headed for a breakdown?
Time to put on your prediction hats, everyone.
We've given you the info, we've shared DeMuro's insights. Now it's your turn to weigh the evidence and make your own calls. What do you think? Which brands have the right stuff to succeed?
This is a conversation, so don't be shy. Share your thoughts, your predictions, everything. The more perspectives we have, the better we can understand this crazy, ever-changing world of cars.
And who knows, maybe one of you will be the one to come up with the next big idea that changes everything.
That would be awesome.
All right, so we've explored the challenges, we've discussed the future. Now it's time for some final thoughts.
Yeah, it's a real tangle, isn't it? It's not just one thing. It's like everything's connected.
Oh, I like that. It's a web.
Totally. Like Fiat. They're battling this trend where people just aren't as into those small cars anymore.
Right.
Tastes change, you know? And then you've got Chrysler. Reliability problems, not a lot of models to choose from. It makes you wonder if they've got a future at all, if Stellantis even cares.
I know, it's tough to watch.
And then Buick. They're killing it in China, but here, not so much. Proves you really got to understand your market.
For sure. It's not just about building a good car, it's about so much more.
Way more. Then you've got Mitsubishi stuck in that always the bridesmaid zone.
Never the bride.
Maybe they need to shake things up a bit, how they market themselves, their designs.
A fresh start.
Something like that. And Alfa Romeo, all that Italian passion, but they're up against some serious competition in the luxury market.
The big boys, yeah.
Makes you think, is heritage enough these days when everyone's all about the newest tech?
It's a good question.
And Mini, trying to be retro and electric at the same time.
Tough one.
Can you even do that? Be both.
So many challenges of they're all asking the same questions, these brands, how to stay relevant, how to keep up with what people want, how to stand out from the crowd.
It's a fight for attention, that's for sure. And those parent companies, they have a lot of power, you know?
Yeah.
Look at Chrysler and Stellantis, Alfa Romeo too. Some brands, they get all the attention, all the money, while others just, well,
Fade away.
it's true. And those parent companies, they have to make some tough choices. Where to invest, who to support. And those choices, they literally decide which brands survive.
So after looking at all of this, what does DeMuro think? Does he have any predictions for these brands?
He's not exactly optimistic, I'll say that. He's especially worried about Chrysler. Thinks they're in real trouble.
Like they're about to go under?
He thinks so. He sees them as a weight around Stellantis' neck and their future. Well, nobody knows. Fiat. He thinks the Hybrid 500 is a good try, but it might not be enough. That small car market, it's shrinking fast.
So not a lot of hope for those two. What about the others?
He's a bit more hopeful about Buick, you know, because of how well they're doing in China.
Right, that's their strong point.
That could keep them afloat, but they can't forget about the U.S. market. They need to figure out how to get American buyers excited again, and those new electric models, those are going to be crucial.
Okay. What about Mitsubishi? Can they break out of that second best image?
It's going to be a tough one, that's for sure. They need to find something really special that sets them apart, give people a reason to choose them over the other guys.
And Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
Can that Italian charm finally win over America?
He loves those cars. He really does. But he thinks they're going up against some real titans in the luxury market. They need to give American buyers something special, something beyond just a fancy name.
Show them they're more than just a pretty face, right?
Exactly.
And what about Mini? Can they modernize without losing their soul?
That's the big question. He thinks they need to strike a balance, appeal to more people, but not forget who they are, what made them special in the first place.
It's like walking a tightrope.
For sure.
So they're all at a crossroads, these brands. Big decisions ahead and a lot riding on those decisions.
It just goes to show nothing's guaranteed, not even in the car industry. People are less loyal to brands these days. They've got so many options. And they'll switch in a heartbeat if they're not happy.
That's so true.
It's not even just about the cars anymore. It's about the whole package. How the brands make you feel, how they treat you.
It's the experience, right?
Yeah.
And this is something we can all relate to. Think about the brands you support, whether it's phones or clothes, food, whatever. We're all making these choices, and loyalty is not a given.
It's got to be earned.
So all of this,
Yeah.
what does it mean for the car industry overall? I mean, things are changing so fast, it's almost hard to keep up.
I know, right? Electric cars, self-driving cars, ride sharing. It's exciting, but also a little scary. Like, where's it all heading?
We're on the edge of something big, that's for sure.
We are. The brands that can figure this out, the ones who can deliver what people want in new and exciting ways, They're the ones who are going to shape how we get around in the future.
It's pretty wild to think about.
I know, it's a lot to take in. But that's why this whole deep dive is so interesting. We're not just looking back, we're trying to figure out what's happening right now and what it means for the future.
We're like pioneers mapping out this new frontier.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe one of our listeners, they'll be the one to come up with the next big thing that changes everything.
I love that thought. All right, so we've talked about the challenges, we've talked about what might be coming next, but the big question remains, what happens to the car industry overall? Are we all going to be in flying cars soon? Will our cars be driving us around? Or is it going to be some crazy future where only the super rich can even afford a car?
Huh. Those are the big questions, right? We can't predict the future, but one thing's for sure. The car industry is about to enter a whole new era. An era defined by technology, by the environment, by what people want.
It's exciting and a little bit scary all at the same time.
Exactly. And the brands that can figure this out, the ones that can deliver what people want, they're the ones who are going to be in charge of how we get around in the future.
We've got a front row seat to all of this. It's like watching a movie unfold.
And with DeMuro's help, we kind of know what's going on behind the scenes.
So before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to throw a question out to everyone listening. Of all the brands we talked about, which ones do you think are going to make it and which ones are doomed?
Time to put on your prediction hats.
We've shared the info, DeMuro's thoughts. Now it's your turn. Think about it. Weigh the evidence. What do you think? Which brands have what it takes to survive?
This is a conversation, so don't be shy. Share your thoughts, your predictions, anything. The more perspectives, the better. We can all learn from each other.
And you never know. One of you might come up with the next big idea that changes the whole car industry.
I love it. Okay, we've talked about the challenges. We've talked about the future. Now it's time for some final thoughts.
Yeah, it's fun to play armchair CEO for a bit.
Right. And it makes you think, what would I do if I were in charge of these companies?
Exactly. And you never know, maybe someone listening right now has a brilliant idea that could save one of these brands.
That's what's so cool about the car world. There's always room for something new, something that shakes things up.
Speaking of shaking things up, it feels like the whole definition of what a car company, even IS, is changing, you know?
Totally. Like, look at Tesla. Are they a car company? A tech company? It's both, really.
And with all this talk about self-driving cars and ride-sharing, it makes you wonder if owning a car will even be a thing in the future.
Right. Are we moving towards transportation as a service, not a product? It's a huge question.
And if that's the case, what happens to all these traditional car companies? Can they adapt, or are they going to go extinct like the dinosaurs?
I think the smart ones are already making moves. They're investing in electric vehicles, in self-driving tech. They're partnering with tech companies.
It's like they're trying to cover all their bases, right?
Exactly. Nobody knows for sure what the future holds, so they're getting ready for anything.
And that's why DeMuro's insights are so helpful. He cuts through all the noise and helps us understand what's really going on.
He's like our guide to this whole crazy world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into these struggling car brands, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that change is inevitable.
And ones who can embrace that change, who can adapt, they're the ones who are going to survive.
We've seen how what people want is changing, how technology is changing the game, and we've seen how much power those parent companies have.
It just goes to show nothing's guaranteed. Not even for these huge car companies that have been around forever.
And that's what makes it so fascinating. It's dynamic. It's always changing. There are challenges and opportunities everywhere you look.
It's never boring, that's for sure.
So as you go about your day, I encourage you to pay attention to those car companies we talked about.
See what they're doing, how they're trying to change, how they're marketing themselves.
Maybe you'll spot the next big trend. Maybe you'll even come up with a brilliant idea that revolutionizes the whole industry.
Hey, you never know.
And who knows, maybe one day we'll be doing a deep dive on your success story. That would be awesome. All right, everyone, thanks for joining us on this journey. And as always, keep those wheels turning.